backstage at the Calvary Baptist Church with Texas Senator Ted Cruz. This is all part of a Fox News primetime lineup of town halls with the GOP candidates. Greta Van Susteren interviewed Ohio Governor John Kasich earlier this evening. Sean Hannity will speak with businessman Donald Trump. And in a special airing of the Kelly File tonight at 11 p.m., yours truly will sit down with Florida Senator Marco Rubio. But first, at stake for the candidates here in North Carolina, 72 delegates awarded proportionally. Currently, the Real Clear Politics average of polls shows Donald Trump with a 10-point lead over Senator Ted Cruz, who's in second place. But the last poll taken in this state was 3 weeks ago, and a lot has changed since then. Senator, thank you so much for being here. Let's start with the obvious question, which is, what are your predictions for North Carolina?
Well, listen, I feel really good here in North Carolina. We have an amazing team on the ground, and we are seeing an energy, we're seeing an excitement. And really what we're seeing in North Carolina is a continuation of what we've been seeing all across the country. You know, if we step back a year ago, we had 17 candidates in the field. I mean, it was a crowded field, and it was a talented, diverse field, a dynamic field. Pretty striking contrast with the Democrats. You know, this whole year, we have seen that field winnow and narrow. And it's gotten narrower and narrower and narrow. And then we saw last week, we saw on Super Tuesday and then Super Saturday, two tremendous outcomes. Where the voters have now made clear that there is only one campaign that has repeatedly beaten Donald Trump and that can and will beat Donald Trump. And so what we're seeing is Republicans uniting behind our campaign.
But what specifically is the path forward, right? Because it takes 1,237 votes in order to become the Republican nominee. And what the odds makers are saying is Ted Cruz would need to win 60% of the vote from this point forward in order to win straight out before we get to a contested convention. And what those same experts are saying is that's really mathematically impossible unless you win Florida, which even you concede is a long shot.
Well, listen, I understand that the experts are constantly saying the conservative can't win. At every stage, if it were up to the experts, we would not have won a primary yet. So I'm all right with the experts saying that.
They say none of them can win except for Donald Trump straight out before a contested
But you know,
convention.
it's funny. Those are the same folks who put Donald Trump on every TV station 24 hours a day, and then once he's the nominee. And nobody should be confused. The network execs who give Donald hundreds of millions of dollars of free airtime are all liberal Democrats. They want him to be the nominee because they know Donald gets killed by Hillary. And their plan is nominate this guy so they can obliterate him. Donald may be the one person on the face of the planet that Hillary Clinton can beat in the November general election. But you asked path forward.
Yeah, what is
so
the
let's
path
talk
for you?
some real simple math. It takes 1,237 delegates to be the nominee. I have just over 300. Donald has about 80 more than I do. Both of us, we're within 80 delegates of each other. The path is simple. We continue to narrow the field. If you look at the other two candidates in the field, Marco Rubio, John Kasich, both good, honorable people. Neither one of them has a path to winning the nomination. They're far too behind in the delegate count. They can't catch up. The path is simple. We continue to narrow the field. Head to head, not only do I beat Donald Trump, but I beat Donald resoundingly. Just today, a new poll came out that has me beating Donald Trump by 13 points head to head. By the way, that same poll has Donald losing to Hillary Clinton and has me beating Hillary Clinton.
He believes his numbers against her will get better once he, quote, starts on her. But I want to ask you, because you've talked about a brokered convention or contested
convention. But let's be clear, the media hasn't started on him, and she hasn't started on him. He's had kid gloves for 6 months from the media, and present company excluded.
Thank you. Let's talk about contested convention and whether that's a likelihood, because I know you've said openly that this could be an enormous mistake for the party. And obviously the party would have to be very divided for it to arrive at a brokered convention in July. But those who want it, some of your backers who don't see an easy path forward to 1237 for you, say, I have no problem with a contested convention. I'd rather see that, they say, than to see somebody get the nomination who only has a plurality, who doesn't have 1237. So if it has to happen ugly, it happens ugly.
Look, there's a difference between a contested convention and a brokered convention. A brokered convention is the fevered dream of the D.C. establishment.
Mitch McConnell.
That everyone is divided, and then suddenly the D.C. establishment swoops in with their white knight. And they're mad at the voters because the voters... You see, that's the reaction of the voters. I think it would be absolutely catastrophic to have a brokered convention where they try to parachute in some D.C. establishment. You would see an open revolt. And it would all but concede the election to Hillary Clinton. The voters need to decide this. And that's why our strategy is very simple. We intend to beat Donald Trump, but the way to beat Donald Trump is beat him at the ballot box, which is what we have done.
If we get to July and you haven't yet amassed 1, 2, 3, 7, and neither has he, let's say it's a two-man race at that point, you're okay with the quote, contested convention where then it goes to a balloting system and it's still decided by the people.
A contested convention is a different thing where you go, if no one gets 1237 and you've got two front runners. Look, Reagan and Ford battled it out at a contested convention. That's what conventions are for. If you're fighting between the candidates who have earned the votes of the people, and it's the delegates at the convention who've been elected to do that, that's the way the system works. And that's perfectly appropriate. But I'll tell you, I don't believe we're going to need that either. I believe our path is very simple. We're going to continue to narrow the field. When we get head-to-head with Donald Trump, we are going to beat Donald Trump over and over and over again.
How does it happen, though? Because what the analysts say is that, and what you've heard Marco Rubio say, is that your path will get harder from here. They point to states like New York and California and Florida, New Jersey, which might not be Ted Cruz territory.
Well, let's talk about those. California, the last field poll that was done, I was in first place in California.
I think they like you.
Well, North Carolina is God's country. But, you know, there's always an analyst saying, well, there's no way for the conservative to win. That is what the talking say. Going into Iowa, every pundit said on every show Trump was going to win. We won an overwhelming tidal wave landmark victory. Then on Super Tuesday, Donald was supposed to sweep all over the country. We won a tremendous victory in Oklahoma. We won a tremendous victory in Alaska. And we won a landslide, historic turnout victory in my home state of Texas. And then let's go to Super Saturday. Super Saturday was supposed to be a great day for Donald Trump. The pundits, those experts who say we don't have a path, they said Donald was going to sweep all 4 states. He had a decisive lead everywhere. Well, it's interesting. Kansas, the day of the Kansas caucuses, Marco Rubio had spent the whole day campaigning in Kansas. That morning, Donald and I were both at the same Kansas caucus site. We spoke back to back to the same group of voters. All of the pundits had predicted Donald was going to win Kansas. Not only did we win, but we won with a landslide nearly 50% of the vote in Kansas.
Because what the poll showed was that you started really surging later in the week.
Yes.
And that Trump has started to gone down a bit since last week's debate and over the past few days. To what do you attribute that?
What I see happening is Republicans are consolidating around us. 65 to 70% of Republicans recognize Donald Trump would be a disaster. If he's the nominee, Hillary wins. Now, Donald's friend has been division. He wants this field divided. As long as that 65 to 70% is split up among 2-3 candidates, help. What happened after Super Tuesday is the folks who want to stop Donald Trump have begun uniting around our campaign, and we are welcoming people who are supporters of Jeb Bush, of Chris Christie, of Rand Paul, of Dr. Ben Carson. We're welcoming. We're welcoming people right now who are supporting Marco Rubio or supporting John Kasich, both good, honorable men, but neither one of them has a path to defeating Donald Trump. And if you want to defeat Donald Trump, I would say to you, come join us, and if we stand together, we'll see the results we've got.
Stand by, because we did take some questions from the audience, and we will have some of that coming up with Senator Ted Cruz, including a question about how you work in Washington without losing your soul.
How is he going to get stuff done without losing his soul? How is he going to get stuff done but still stand for the principles that all of us believe in?
That was a supporter of Senator Ted Cruz asking the question we have heard from a lot of Republican voters. Live here in Raleigh, North Carolina. How do you get things done without giving up your values? And we're back now with Senator Ted Cruz. That's the question. How they love that you stand on principle. Right. They believe you, and they believe you're a constitutionalist and you mean it and you're not going to. But they want things to get done if they send you to Washington.
Absolutely, and the stakes are too high. The problems are too big for us not to fix them.
How do you do it?
Well, if you think about it, a president has really three levers of authority, three levers to change the direction of the ship of government. The first is executive power. Now, that's been the one that Obama has abused so mightily. But the silver lining to that is that everything done with executive power can be undone with executive power. So, for example, I have pledged on the very first day in office to rescind every single illegal and unconstitutional executive action taken by President Obama.
Do you see the presidency as the weakest branch of government, as the one that is supposed to be the smallest?
It is not the weakest branch of government, but it is circumscribed by the Constitution and its authority. And so when the president illegally grants amnesty, as he has, that is contrary to the law, it's contrary to the Constitution, but with the stroke of a pen, that executive amnesty will be gone.
So you undo it. What are 2 and 3?
Also on the first day in office, I pledged to direct the Department of Justice to open an investigation into Planned Parenthood and to prosecute any of our criminal violations. Also on the first day in office, I intend to direct every agency of the federal government that the persecution of religious liberty ends that day.
The day-to-day management of the government and getting deals done and getting tax reform done.
You're talking about change. Mm-hmm. Also on day one, I will direct the Department of Education ends today. Now you want to talk.
They are not fans of Common Core.
Well, under Common Core, we have 11 days in a week, so that we've got a long time till Election Day. Look, all of those are actions that a strong, principled conservative president can do and do immediately, and that I will do. The second lever of presidential authority and change is foreign policy. And foreign policy can change overnight. I mean, it's worth remembering in 1981, Iran released our hostages the day that Ronald Reagan was sworn into office.
Going for is the things that cannot be done simply by the executive office. The stuff like entitlement reform was one of the things that I was asked about.
Megyn, I'm starting more broadly because what the media tells us is you can't fix this, you can't change this, and it isn't true. On foreign policy, on day one, I will rip to shreds this catastrophic Iranian nuclear. Also on day one, I will begin the process of moving the American embassy in Israel to Jerusalem, the once and eternal capital. Now, let's focus on the third area, which is where you want to go, which is legislation. Legislation is the hardest lever to use because right now Congress is fundamentally broken. It is dysfunctional. I am campaigning based on two big legislative policy initiatives. Number one, repealing every single word of Obamacare. And number two, passing a simple flat tax and abolishing the IRS.
You're going to need control of the House and the Senate and the Republican Party if you want to get that done.
Now listen, you're right, and neither of those are easy. I am not remotely naive or Pollyannish.
We're behind you, Ted.
Well, and that's actually the key. Listen, could I get either of those done in this current Congress? Not a chance. Because right now, the Washington cartel, all of the lobbyists, all of the special interests, they depend on the status quo. The IRS tax code, the reason it's so long is that's where all the carve-outs, all the subsidies, all the handouts are buried in that tax code. How do you change it? You know, if you look at the last time we broke the Washington cartel, it was 1981. It was the Reagan Revolution, where Reagan took it to the people, and there was a tidal wave from the people. The way we get that done is I intend to make 2016, the general election against Hillary Clinton, a referendum on repealing Obamacare and abolishing the IRS.
Let me ask you about immigration. That was another question somebody had about what you're going to do to secure the southern border and how quickly. And I said, is that a big issue for you? And she said, I'm worried about ISIS coming across the southern border. Now, I asked you this at the debate, but we didn't quite get an exact answer. But what about the Jeff Sessions factor? Because people for whom immigration is a big issue, they like Jeff Sessions. You have stood shoulder to shoulder with him.
I like Jeff Sessions. He is a friend and a very good man. But he endorsed somebody else. He endorsed Donald Trump.
So what message should people take from that?
You know, I actually trust the voters to make their own determination. In 2013, when Marco Rubio was standing with Barack Obama and Harry Reid and Chuck Schumer and pushing the massive Gang of Eight amnesty bill, I stood with millions of Americans and led the fight against amnesty, and we defeated it in Congress.
Does President Cruz build a wall?
Yes, but let me point out, let me finish with 2013. At that time, Donald Trump not only was nowhere to be found, he was funding the Gang of Eight. He gave $50,000 to 5 of the 8 members of the Gang of Eight. And let me say to folks at home, one of the most ominous words that was repeated over and over again in that last debate was flexible. Donald said that over and over again, flexible. He was going to be flexible. Now, you know, in D.C., flexible is code word for they're getting ready to stick it to you. And let's be really clear what Donald was being flexible on. One of the most striking moments of that debate, Megyn, is when he turned to Marco Rubio and said, Marco, I agree that you were being flexible, and it was a good thing when you negotiated with Chuck Schumer and Harry Reid on the Gang of Eight. That was a good thing, and I agree with you. I almost fell over. I thought lightning was going to come down. I mean, Donald Trump has claimed to base his entire campaign on immigration. On the debate stage, he ran away from it and embraced the compromise that led to the Gang of Eight amnesty bill. And as you know, Donald Trump told the New York Times editorial board everything he said on immigration is just empty campaign rhetoric. He doesn't plan to build a wall.
Well, that's not what he said.
How do you know that?
Everything was an empty campaign rhetoric.
How do you know that?
Well, all I know is that the New York Times nothing so shockingly newsworthy that it would change the dynamic of the campaign.
So we should take the New York Times word for it.
Because we have much more with Senator Cruz coming up right after this break.
Social Security is over $800 billion.
Medicare and Medicaid funding is over $1 trillion. And the Congress has said that these are untouchable, that these are non-discretionary. How can we break the gridlock and get through the establishment? Because, quite honestly, these are unsustainable programs.
Joining me again, Texas Senator Ted Cruz. Great to see you. So, people are worried about Social Security and entitlement reform. We talked about that. Want to get your quick answer on how on earth you would tackle that. You say the will of the people. Can you get any more specific?
Well, listen, when it comes to Social Security, I think Washington right now is being reckless and irresponsible, allowing Social Security to careen towards insolvency. For a long time, Social Security has been treated like the third rail of politics. If you touch it, you get electrocuted. Not only am I touching it, I'm campaigning on it. I intend to strengthen and preserve Social Security, and let me tell you exactly how. 4 principles. For seniors, for those on Social Security or near retirement, there should be no changes, none whatsoever. We have made promises. People have ordered their financial affairs. They need to be able to count on those. But for younger workers, look, I'm 45. It is hard to find someone, my generation, who thinks Social Security will be there for us. That presents a real opportunity for reform. For younger workers, we should follow 3 principles. Number 1, gradually raise the age of retirement for younger workers. Give them time to plan and save accordingly. Number 2, change the rate of benefits for younger workers so that it matches inflation instead of exceeding inflation. Those 2 changes alone bring Social Security into solvency. But the third one is critical. Allow younger workers to keep a portion of our tax payments in a personal account like a 401k that we own, we control, and we can pass on to our kids and grandkids.
Let me get through a couple of other questions that the good people had. I want to go through a few of them if we can. This one's sort of related to the one we discussed, but it's a little different. They're worried about the bad people in Washington.
Oh, yeah.
How, you know how your mom tells you don't surround yourself with unhealthy people because they can rub off on you? They're worried about you losing your soul when you go there. And one of the specific questions was, what will you do to hold on to your faith and who you are?
Well, look, I mean, a lot of it is being grounded in knowing who you are, starting with a foundation. I'm a Christian. My faith is integral to who I am. And I can think of no job for which a relationship with God and a reliance on prayer is more important than serving as president with the responsibilities that position entails. I am blessed with an incredible family. You've gotten to know Heidi and the girls. By the way, my girls think Megyn is a total rock star. I mean, at the debates, I'm there, Caroline and Catherine are like, yeah, Dad, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Where's Megyn? I mean, they are so excited to see you. So,
tell them it's mutual.
But it's a great grounding. It is a wonderful... All right, I will tell a Caroline story. So, every child is different. Catherine, our baby, is 5. She's sweet, sweet, sweet. She hugs on you. She does. She does. And Caroline, who's 7, she is a rascal. She takes after her daddy, poor girl. But, her attitude to this campaign is, yeah, whatever, Dad. Okay, fine. But there was one moment right before Super Tuesday when Heidi was at home and Caroline was sitting on the couch and was watching, I don't know, it may have been Fox News, was watching TV, and some commentator was saying, it would be a disaster for Cruz if Donald Trump wins the state of Texas. And Caroline, my 7-year-old who has no interest in politics, jumps up on the couch, sticks both fingers in her ears and goes, "Not gonna happen! Not gonna happen!"
And she was right.
And Heidi called to tell me that story, and I doubled over laughing.
They keep you grounded.
Beyond grounded.
They keep you grounded. Yes. I've seen them at all the debates, and I've seen you playing with your girls in between the debates, and that must be your secret sauce right there, to staying connected to them. Another question from one of our attendees today. There's a gentleman here who was a police officer who was injured in the line of duty, and he said he was either too proud or too stupid to take the disability benefits offered to him in the wake of that, and he's struggled ever since. But he has a different perspective on it, and he wonders how we can create a mindset among Americans to not abuse these social net programs, safety net programs that we have.
Well, let me say first of all to the officer who was here who was injured.
Ovation.
Thank you, sir. And thank you to every one of the officers who's here who risk your lives every day to keep us safe. We are grateful for what you do, and I'll tell you this. One of the most disgraceful things of the last 7 years has been the treatment of cops. The demonization, the vilification coming from the President, coming from the Attorney General, it is absolutely unacceptable, and I give you my solemn promise that will end on January 27th.
To sum it up, the mindset.
The question about the social safety net, it's an incredibly important one. My view is the social safety net should be a trampoline and not a hammock. That the entire purpose, listen, everyone gets down on their luck. Everyone faces hard times. And we need to help people when they are in hard times. But the critical objective of the welfare programs should be to get people off of the welfare programs. You look at one of the most successful public policy innovations of modern times. It was welfare reform in the mid-'90s, where millions of people who'd been on welfare, when they put a work requirement in, went out and got jobs. And here's the critical thing that the left doesn't understand. You're not helping anyone by making them dependent, by trapping them in dependency on government. And I believe we need to champion every able-bodied adult ought to be working or actively looking for a job, and the entire purpose, every one of the welfare programs, even disability programs, people with disabilities are still capable in many, many cases of doing meaningful work, maybe not heavy manual labor.
This man who has 6 replaced discs in his neck is chopping firewood right now for a living. Unbelievable.
And when big government traps people in dependency, it saps them of their self-respect. It saps them of the dignity of work, of coming home and looking your kids in the eyes and providing for them. And that is integral to achieving the American dream. And it's one of the tragedies of the Obama economy, is so many have been trapped in it.
All right, Senator Cruz, stand by, because we have some personal stories and pictures. You've got to see these pictures you've never seen before. Welcome back, everyone, to our special telethon, face-to-face with the candidates. Back now with Texas Senator Ted Cruz, where there is a lot of enthusiasm for you in this room. I want to take you back to last week's debate that we had in Detroit. And the negative feedback that a lot of had to it, not exactly the moderators, more the candidates and the dialogue that we saw up there, the nature of the discussion. You said the campaign has gone to the gutter. What do you make of it?
Well, listen, I think everyone is fed up with personal insults, with just ad hominem attacks. Listen, I have no views whatsoever on any part of Donald Trump's anatomy. And I frankly could not care less. And I don't think the voters care either. And if other candidates decide they want to just engage in name-calling and insults, that's their prerogative. They can choose to do so. But I'm not going to respond in kind. I'm going to keep the focus on substance, on issues, on the problems facing this country, and on solutions, how we turn things around.
You had a statement about, children watching that debate and some of the references that were made, and you said we shouldn't be in a position where we feel embarrassed by our president. Now, Trump in particular has come out and said, I will not be like this as president. We're in a rough and tumble campaign, and I know how to behave.
Actions speak louder than words. And Donald has also told us that he will be someone totally different as president. He said he can be the most politically correct person on earth. You know what? Let me talk for a minute to the folks who are supporting Donald. I understand why people are supporting Donald. You're angry. I'm angry. We're all angry. We're angry at Washington. We're angry at politicians who lie to us over and over again. They make promises and they don't do what they said they would do. And I understand if you're angry that Trump is the loudest, angriest voice, so that feels like a vessel to express that anger. But Donald has, number one, been intricately involved in the corruption in Washington for 40 years. If you're fed up with Washington corruption, you don't support someone who has been supporting liberal Democrats from Jimmy Carter to John Kerry to Joe Biden to Harry Reid to Chuck Schumer to Hillary Clinton, making multiple contributions to her presidential campaign. And Megyn, the corruption is bipartisan. You're right. He has supported the Washington establishment, both the Democrats and Republicans. He has funded open border Democrats for 40 years. But also critically, if you're tired of politicians lying to you, if you think Donald, quote, tells it like it is, he is telling us he's lying to us. He's saying the day after he's elected, he would be someone exactly different than he is. I'll tell you, Megyn, the day after I'm elected president, I will be the exact same person I am today.
I got to ask you one question about that. Because he comes after you, as you know, as, quote, Lion Ted, right? He's calling you Lion Ted. And one of the things that you've come under fire for is what happened in Iowa with Dr. Ben Carson and all that whole thing. But there's a report, there's a reason I'm bringing it up, but there's a something similar is happening with your supporters and Marco Rubio in an ad that's gone out that says wasted vote. And Rubio's campaign is accusing you of disgusting tactics because the email says multiple media reports say Marco Rubio is being pressured to drop out before Florida and his campaign denies it. Do you stand by that? Do you call for that to be pulled?
Well, look, the nature of politics is that when a campaign is flailing, they attack. And they attack other candidates and they attack their integrity. This particular email apparently came from a volunteer in Hawaii, not affiliated with the campaign, not working for the campaign, not under authorization for the campaign. We have over 200,000 volunteers across the country. I cannot control, nor do I want to control, what 200,000 volunteers do.
You don't stand by it.
Not only that, our legal counsel sent them a letter saying, take that email down. One volunteer sent out, and by the way, they forwarded a CNN story that was the lead story on Drudge, is what the volunteer did. Now, we asked him to take it down anyway. Why? because we knew that other campaigns would seek to make political hay out of it, use it to try to attack my integrity because a volunteer forwards a story that's the lead story on Drudge to other voters, and we knew that reporters would do what you're doing, which is ask, doesn't this prove you're unethical that voters are forwarding links to news stories?
That wasn't exactly how I phrased it.
I have no idea if the story is true or false. I have no idea, but this is the way politics is played. Where if you have a campaign, where the Rubio campaign, they don't want to focus on the issues. They want to talk about Donald's hands. How about focusing on how we solve the problems in this country?
And that's exactly where we're going to pick it up. And welcome back to our special Kelly File. For the candidates, Senator Cruz is with us. He's addressed a wide range of topics tonight. But now it's time to talk about one very important subject, and that is family. So we went back and found some old pictures of you, Senator. Your campaign was good enough to provide us with a couple of these. You haven't even seen these yourself, but I take you back to Princeton. Was it like late 80s, early 90s? So a boy from Houston makes it into Princeton University. His father told him he went there on missionary work, right?
That was true.
And they say nobody liked Ted Cruz back. No one's ever liked Ted Cruz. They didn't like him back in college. I ask you how a conservative like you could ever have been liked at Princeton University.
Well, listen, there are some loudmouths who like to throw insults. I'll tell you, I had an incredible time in college. I was very, very active on the debate team, and
Did that help you, now?
Sure, and it was great fun. I mean, to be honest, I think I probably learned as much, if not more, from debate as I did from my studies,
sure.
and had a lot of close friends on the debate team. Was active in student government. Was the chairman of the university council, and had wonderful friends. But listen, I'll admit, Princeton was a daunting place. I mean it. I came from a family where my mother was the first in her family to go to college.
Here's your debate team.
My dad had come from Cuba with nothing as an immigrant, and I didn't come from money. Listen, Princeton, a lot of the kids are rich.
Right.
They come from privilege. Their families are masters of the universe. I graduated from Second Baptist High School, a little bitty Christian school in Houston, Texas.
You must have had some amazing grades.
My graduating class was 43. No one from the high school had ever gone to any Ivy League school before. And we didn't know to an Ivy League school. And
this is great. Can you see this? Can you see this picture? We'll put that back up so he can see it. There's a lot of hair. Yeah, a lot of hair.
Yeah, that was the unfortunate, look, teenage years.
It was the 80s, early 90s.
Yeah, my hair actually got down to my shoulder blades for a little while. It was.
And then he decided to take that look to Harvard Law School. He hadn't had enough at Princeton. He decided to go on to Harvard Law School.
But thankfully, I cut my hair by then.
Okay. And joined up for the Bush v. Quayle. We have a picture of you with a cigar and the Bush v. Quayle T-shirt with some buddies.
And that was actually the election night party in 1994 when Republicans took Congress.
Not Bush v. Quayle, Bush in.
And that 94, we set up, you can see on the back of the wall there, we had all of the outcomes state by state, and we were putting check marks up. You got to understand, Harvard Law School is packed with liberals. Now, there were a bunch of us that were conservatives. Those are a couple of good buddies of mine, and we're celebrating the party, and we're just rocking the dorm. And you can hear all the liberals just, weeping and gnashing their teeth. That was a good night.
And then you went on to meet your beautiful wife, Heidi, married 2 beautiful girls, and now serving your country for many years. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Megyn.